person, a human being. Like I mentioned, some of the ones that showed up in Point Pleasant had an olive drab skin color to them, and they just seemed so emotionless and lack of any kind of empathy, or their whole mission was just to get people to stop talking about the phenomenon. So they could be an extraterrestrial race. They could be part of a secretive level of the government that we're not aware of. That they're specifically, their job is to shut people up and stop talking about the phenomenon. I don't know, but they've been seen by many, many people, and not just in one particular area across the country, if not around the world. They've been witnessed and encountered. So it's a pretty well-known, prominent thing that's going on. People are experiencing them and seeing them and having run-ins with these men in black.
Yeah, even if it was the government, doing that psychologically, okay, to intimidate people not to talk. I think the majority of people, if you get somebody, dressed in black, kind of doesn't look like they quite fit in, would be enough to make you kind of scared, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it definitely would be an intimidation factor involved, especially if they're showing up in business suits and looking very professional and talking professional and trying to persuade people not to talk about their experience. Yeah, that would be intimidating for sure.
Now, too, I was going to say, Joe Taylor, who is a person in Texas, has a museum. He works for different museums, across the country, putting dinosaur bones and back together, reconstructing them for the museums and repairing them and all that stuff. He was on my show, about a month ago, and he had a friend that her friend supposedly was going to town and saw a person in the middle of the road and hit it. And she thought she hit a human. Now, she claimed she got out of the car, okay, and she realized that this human had wings. And it had, the glowing eyes, and it stared at her. And then all of a sudden, it kind of like flew off. And what I said to Joe, I said, did they ever think about taking that vehicle in, right away and get DNA? Because I guess supposedly it also put a dent on the driver's side fender, to see if you could get any DNA off of it. And nobody thought about it. So, maybe that's a hoax or whatever. But, that was an interesting, report. And that happened recently.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's funny, I ask people all the time, did you think about doing this or you think about doing that? And they're not thinking about that at the time. They're frightened. They don't know what they experienced, and they just want to either get out of the area as quickly as they can or try to forget about the situation because it's something, as I mentioned earlier in the show, something like that happens to people that they're not expecting it to happen, or they've been taught and brought up that those things don't exist, and then it happens to them. That can be quite traumatic. And what the general public fails to realize, and even scientists fail to realize, that people who have these experiences aren't scientifically minded. I'm sure there are some that are, but the majority of them aren't. And when they have an experience like that, they're not thinking, well, I should get a blood sample or a tissue sample, or I should take a picture or video or whatever. They've had a very traumatic experience, and they either want to forget about it or they want to try to get as quickly away from that situation as possible. And by the time they think about, well, maybe I should have gotten a picture, or I should have collected stuff off that dent, or if there was blood or tissue, I should have turned that in for DNA. By that time, it's way too late. It's contaminated, and it's not going to yield anything. I'll give you a perfect example. This happened to me this past weekend. I hosted a Bigfoot event in Pennsylvania, and I was on my way to that event. And in the car with me, I had a doctor. His name is Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and he's one of the leading scientific minds in the field, scientific authorities that is looking into the Bigfoot phenomenon. He was one of our special guests, and we were discussing Bigfoot, and he's a anthropologist. He has a background in primate anatomy and foot morphology and foot structure and anatomy of animals in general. And we were talking about a variety of different things when all of a sudden, out of the roadway on our right, runs this animal, and it ran across the road very quickly in front of our vehicle, maybe 2 car lengths in front of us, and crossed the road. And what was unique about this animal was it was completely void of hair. It looked almost, our first thought was it was a marsupial, maybe a kangaroo or something. And here we are in southwestern Pennsylvania. Why would there be a kangaroo out here? They're not common or native. But it turned out we got a better look at it as we slowed down and looked. But by the time it was across the road and heading into the brush, we realized that it was a mangy fox. It was nothing more than a fox that lost all its fur because of parasites. And just that fleeting glimpse, we all had cell phones with us. We all had cell phone cameras, and we're sitting there BSing and talking, and this thing runs across the road so quick. And even though it was a common animal, for me to pull up my phone and take a picture, it was gone in a matter of seconds. And for us to first look at it and then finally realize what it was, a common person seeing that can have a misidentification, and that animal's gone, and they're not thinking picture. They're not thinking, oh, that was a mangy fox. They're seeing something they've never seen before, never experienced before, and by the time it's over, they're realizing, what the heck did I see? And as I said, it's either that fight or flight. They're either going to sit there and think, well, maybe I should get DNA or I should get a picture or video. By the time it comes around to that, it's over and done with, and there's no picture, video they can take or no DNA they can collect. So the public is sadly misinformed if they think, oh, you have a Bigfoot encounter or a Mothman encounter, let's get a video or a picture or something to prove it's real. By the time it's over and said and done with, there's no opportunity to get that information.
Oh, yeah. And at least you guys had closure on it. So you got to see what it was before it disappeared. And so, I mean, that makes it better. But I bet when you first saw it, though, I bet your heart was just pounding.
Oh, we were like, whoa, what in the world is that thing? Because it happened so quick. I thought at first it was a dog coming across the road, but then I realized it was completely void of hair. There wasn't a patch of hair on it at all. And as I said, it looked like a marsupial when it bounded across the road. And I'm thinking, well, what the heck is a kangaroo or a wallaby doing out here? This is the United States, and unless somebody's got a weird-looking pet, that shouldn't be there. And it was quite exciting. We were talking about it for quite some time afterwards, but just the whole incident that happened in a matter of maybe 5 to 6 seconds, and it was over with, was quite exhilarating. I mean, it's something you don't normally see every day, is a mangy fox or a mangy bear or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I can guarantee that would get my heart going. Here's the thing. A lot of people think, and there's a couple of things going on, but I'll start off with this. Joe Taylor, like I said, he's been all over the world. Africa, Egypt, you name it, gathering dinosaur bones, reconstructing them for museums. He claims many years ago he was in Africa in one of the little villages, and a hunter came back and claimed that he saw a dinosaur and that he thought he killed it. Now, there's reports of dinosaurs yet today in Africa ever so often, depending on whereabouts in Africa. Now, these aren't dinosaurs that, are 30 feet, 40 feet. They're like 8 feet, 6 feet, whatever, what he claims. But the next morning, they went there, where the hunter claims that he saw a miniature T-Rex, matter of fact. The hunter was about ready to kill a pig, and all of a sudden, this little T-Rex grabs the pig, has the pig in his mouth, so he threw a spear and into the T-Rex. And the next morning, here's the story is, here's the T-Rex with the pig still, in its mouth, dead. And it was about 6 feet. Now, I don't know if that was a hoax, but he claims that he spent a lot of years in the jungles at one point, going through looking for, whatever. And there's been all kinds of sightings of those type of creatures. So if that is true, then Bigfoot or anything else could maybe possibly exist.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about the supposed dinosaurs existing, like the Mekele Mbembe is supposed to live along the from what I heard in South America, they've seen it. It's supposed to be like what's the dinosaur called? The vegetarian dinosaur. The name escapes me. I apologize, but the people have claimed they've seen that, and the T-Rexes. I've heard that too, but along the same lines of thinking of Bigfoot, where's the evidence? Where's the physical proof that these things are existing? All we have are stories of people seeing that. If the hunter truly speared a T-Rex with a pig in its mouth, you would think that he would take that to somebody and say, hey, look what I killed, and then word would get out, and they'd have a scientific team or somebody come and examine it.
Supposedly,
document it.
Supposedly the local government did. But again, now I've also had a couple scientists on my show that said that, yeah, dinosaurs could exist in today, but the auction content is not like it was in the prehistoric time. So there's no way a dinosaur could be 30 feet, 40, 60, or whatever the feet, in diameter. They would be kind of a scaled down miniature, of it, because the auction content couldn't support their life. But I mean,
well, I'm sure that the Amazon jungle and parts of Africa that are very remote may have animals that we haven't discovered yet. They make discoveries every day of insects and different types of animals, primates. They've recently discovered different types of primates that weren't thought to exist. So I guess anything is possible, but until I see hard evidence or proof that these mini T-Rexes are running around, or more than just stories, that's all they are to me, are stories.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think the climate is designed to be a good habitat for these animals. But then again, I don't know everything. I'm not a scientist, so that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's why I I think, they would end the story of Bigfoot one way or another if they could actually, I hate to say it, get one at sites and shoot it and bring it back and give it to the authorities and let them examine it and figure out what it is. Going back into the 1920s up in Seattle, the old coal-fired power plant, there was reports of a hairy man, running, down and going through, and stealing food, going through garbage cans and stuff like that. And that was reported for quite a few years, and then all of a sudden it quit. So, and that, has been documented both, at that time by the police, newspapers, and all that stuff. Again, we don't know what it was. Maybe it was some guy. It was, extremely hairy, running around naked. I don't know.
Yeah, those reports are commonplace. If you go back in history and look at the newspaper archives, if you look up wild men reports, you'll find so many. I have so many of the reports myself on file that I put into binders, and I collect them for myself. That again, Bigfoot wasn't coined. That name Bigfoot wasn't given until 1958. So before that, they were known as wild men because nobody really knew what they were. They were just this wild, hairy thing that lived in the forest that stole livestock and chickens and killed cows. And like I mentioned earlier, people chased them down in posses with pitchforks and torches, but they never successfully found the animals. And those stories about these hairy wild men raiding garbage and coming into small local communities to look for food, that doesn't surprise me. There are articles out there like that. So whether or not it was a Bigfoot or not, or maybe a homeless guy, who knows? Anything's possible. But there are tons of stories like that have been around for decades. If you do some research, you can find a lot of that information online, or even in if you go to the local library and ask them to see some historical documents or even newspaper archives, you can find a lot of those stories are prevalent.
Yeah, what I find, because of the age of the internet, okay, somebody can go post something, right, on Facebook, and all of a sudden millions of people see it. And then, so you can create a hoax really fast or whatever. But if you go back before the internet, okay, let's go back to the 1920s or even before that. I mean, there's been all these sightings of all these weird things, like Bigfoot or what have you, the hairy man or the wild man, and all across the country. So I find it so strange, and going back even to the American natives, and it has to have some type of base behind it at one point, because to be all over the country and all over Canada and all these places, not just in the United States and Canada, and even in Europe. It just makes